Very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here today in TehTarik 4.0. In this session, we hope that at the end of the day, or at the end of this morning, we hope that you'll be able to take something back to your office. All right. So before we move forward, so just if you don't mind, please mute yourself. All right. For the meantime, of course, then if you can, please ask a question when you can later during the Q&A. Please switch on your video first, unmute yourself, definitely. Introduce yourself as well, and of course, please ask away. Thank you very much. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to do something different and something more relaxed as well. So, to what to expect this morning, right? So we start off with a quick welcome remark, and of course we introduce Simon definitely from Georg to deliver his keynote sharing at this Industry 4.0, and sorry, Teh Tarik 4.0. Then eventually we'll move on towards Teh Tarik and of course the Q&A, and then of course the session ends. Yeah. So we always hear about the advantages of implementing 4.0 in your office. We talk about faster manufacturing, of course, less wastages, and of course, eventually at the end of the day, low operating costs, and then which would lead to eventually higher profits. Yeah. So, but then again, we always hear on the other side of the questions where is it really possible? Is it really is it really mind-boggling that it's so difficult, or can it be really done? Or most importantly is at the end of the day, you always hear that cost of implementing 4.0 in your office is going to be very expensive. So of course, at the end of the day, I mean, it depends very much on your company as well. So let me introduce to you our next speaker at today's Teh Tarik 4.0 in a very important keynote conference. So this is Simon. Right, so his life's motto is ideas alone have little worth. The value of an innovation lies in its practical implementation. I'm enthusiastic about materializing Industry 4.0 in the Malaysian manufacturing sector and employed as a production manager, responsible for manufacturing, product development, and process improvement at Georg, Malaysia, Sdn Bhd. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Simon, the screen is all yours.
Today, we are going to give you an answer to the question in your mind, asking, how do I want to implement Industry 4.0 successfully in my organization? We will remove the mist covering a successful Industry 4.0 implementation in your organization. But how are we going to do that? In today's presentation, we cover two case studies of successful Industry 4.0 implementation at Georg, Malaysia, Sdn Bhd, covering supervisory, control, and data acquisition. For each and every case study, we will talk about its background, so you will get a brief understanding about the project. Secondly, we will talk about the challenges we faced during the project execution, during the implementation phase. Thirdly, we will see what we will get by implementing SCADA in our manufacturing processes. Did we achieve what we wanted to achieve, or did we fail to get our results? Lastly, we talk about the next steps, because we never stop where we are now. We always move forward. For each case study, two takeaways are provided. That rounds up the technical side. Secondly, we will talk about your money, your organization's money, and how to get it back. We talk about the return on investment and what makes it difficult to calculate it reliably. We provide an alternative to you, the discounted payback period, and discuss its advantages and its application to your projects, to your organization. That closes the loop. The technical part has been discussed, as well as the financial side of the projects. Afterwards, we move into whether we should scale up our internal resources or use external Industry 4.0 solution providers to support our organization. With that said, we concluded all together and give you another 3 key takeaways from today's presentation. Let us jump into our first case study. Supervisory control and data acquisition for ovens. At figure 2, you can clearly see an oven. It is an oven used in our critical process. The oven is my age. It is very reliable. It is using manual timers and temperature controllers, which have no digital footprint, no digital documentation. The process was stable, but we want to know what is going on in our ovens in real time. At figure 1, we can clearly see on top of a train, one of our products used as an insulator between top high voltage and ground the train. If that insulator fails within the next 30 years, the train can't move. So we have to make sure that our process, especially the ovens, are operating stable and as we want them to operate. The stakes are high. That was the reason why we implemented supervisory control and data acquisition for our 7 ovens. We wanted to control the oven temperature and get live information about what is happening in each of the 7 ovens. We want to look at the temperature curves, not only now, also after a couple of years. So we have to save the temperature curves. We want to control the operations, not only at the oven level, but also at our computer. At the end, we need trends, we need graphs, we need to generate reports and alarms if anything goes wrong. That is the background of the process. Let us see how we implemented and what challenges we faced. I have to admit, we made a very huge mistake. We allocated to save cables, to save wiring, we allocated the server next to the ovens in a high temperature environment and in an industrial environment. That caused our equipment to shut down frequently, and we did not achieve our 100% uptime, what we wanted to have. In figure 3, we see our products. All these products are waiting for the next process. The customers are waiting for the products. The pressure built up. Did we give up at that moment? No. We made sure we made the only logical step and moved the server and the critical equipment to an air-conditioned server room and achieved 100% uptime for the next years. On top of that, we are able to perform our maintenance and enhancement in-house and thus saves valuable time and valuable costs. All functions we stipulated in our background, we fulfill 100%, and we are really glad that we achieved a very stable process. We went from chaotic and unreliable to 100% controlled and stable. But did we stop in this moment? No. We are moving on, and since 2080, we monitor the energy consumption of our whole factory, equipment by equipment. we are able to identify what causes our electricity bill to be so high. The ovens are one of the key issues. Thus, we only let them run in the night to make sure that we save some electricity bill because the rates are lower in the night. And secondly, we improve the internal of the oven so we are able to stack it properly and run it less frequently. On top of that, now we have our material requirements planning system on the one side, where we store all our information, and our SCADA system on the other side. These two are now seamlessly integrated and functioning well together. From this project, there are two key takeaways I want to highlight. First, always have redundancy. In case your SCADA system is down, you still have to go back to your manual system and make sure your process can run without the uptime of the SCADA system. Secondly, keep in mind your environment. Most of the equipment is only reliable at an ambient temperature of 40 degrees. Don't overdo it. Your server usually needs air condition, as human also. With that, I would like to close the first case study and look at another great example of how we can improve the process. The heart of our organization, the mixing department. At figure 4, you can see our small batch mixers where our products are getting the material they need. We are getting the raw materials from our supplier, but the actual mixing process we do in-house with our mixers. The process is absolutely critical to our success and to our products that they last 30 and more years. We started out by manually documenting all the processes we did. That worked out fine, but we definitely want it to be monitored and controlled also digitally. We can't rely 100% on manual filled-in sheets. The TV you can see here is after the implementation, whereby our material requirements planning system is working seamlessly with the SCADA system and thus capturing all the values we need. Let us now look at the challenges we faced during the implementation. There are two challenges I would like to present here. First, the timeline. We expected that we definitely can complete the project in a couple of months, get it smooth, get it running, and we didn't do it. We needed over 1 year. Why did it take so long? In retrospect, we did not share all the requirements to our external solution providers. They assumed they know what they need, but unfortunately that did not match with our requirement. So, an example is the accuracy of the scale, pictured in figure 5. We really have to have it accurate, and we told our external solution provider we have to have a very accurate scale. But our mistake was not to exactly specify what is the tolerance, and thus we got into trouble. It took us more time than expected, and we had a lot of delay in the process of implementing the project. Did we give up and just let the timeline be the timeline? No. After over 1 year, finally we were able to 100% monitor and control all essential raw material preparations, all essential components, each and every shift, each and every day. Our SCADA system is seamlessly integrated with our material requirements planning system. And thus, now we have two types of record keeping. On the one side, we still continue with our manual system. On the other side, we add the digital footprint and get the values each and every day. If anything goes wrong, we can compare both and judge out of that. Did we stop here and said, now we have SCADA for mixing? That is sufficient? No. We are looking into the automatic filling of our components. In fact, we already started a project, and by end of this year, we expect that we are going to have an automatic filling of all our components, all our materials / recipes. Let us now look into two key takeaways to avoid the challenges we faced. Firstly, we have to provide the external service provider all the information they need. It is great to provide to them the project charter and a detailed requirements list, so they exactly know what they have to do. They can exactly calculate their costs and thus give you a better price in a shorter period of time. Secondly, communication. It is best to sit down with the external service provider and just ask him whether he needs to know anything, walk him through the process so he really understands the individual problems your organization and your process faces. By doing so, you reduce the financial impact on your organization and get the project done in time. With that, I would like to close our technical part of the presentation. Now, we look into the numbers. We look into the money, your organization's money, and how to get it back. On the left side, we have the usual calculation, return on investment. Is your net income divided by the cost of investment times 100%. On the other side, we see the discounted payback period, which returns you at the end of the day the number of years you need to wait until you can break even. Usually, everybody uses the return on investment calculation, but there are three key difficulties I have to highlight. First, the return on investment calculation does not keep in mind the time. It does not look into the time value of money. And thirdly, it is easy to manipulate coming from external parties. What is the alternative to the return on investment basic calculation? The discounted payback period. That is what I recommend and what we use. We just say we have our years pre or fully recovery plus the unrecovered cost at the start of the year divided by cash flow during full recovery year. At the end, you will get a number. For example, your break-even point will be after 3.2 years. There are definitely more sophisticated and even better calculation methods, but the discounted payback period gives us the years until break even, and that is what we want to know. Let us not stay at the theoretical part. Let us look into an easy example to make the point clear. Our yearly net income is 250,000 ringgits. our initial investment, our capital expenditure is 1 million ringgits. The number of years we will get a net income is exactly 5 years. Thus, at the end of the day, our return on investment is 25%. That really sounds great. If somebody comes to me and says, Simon, your return on investment is 25%, now or never invest your money, I would definitely go for it. Finding out afterwards that there's no calculation inside, that we have to keep in mind the cost of capital. There is not a timeline mentioned, which is actually 5 years. So after looking at the 5 years and that is not discounted for the time value of money, I wouldn't go for it. That is proven by the discounted payback period. Our cost of capital is 10%. Our yearly net income, as the previous example, is also 250,000 ringgits, and the years we get it back is 5. So the left calculation and the right calculation, the numbers did not change. But because we keep in mind that our cost of capital is 10% year by year, the amount, the actual time value we are getting back is becoming less and less, starting from 227,000 to the last year only 155,000 ringgits. After we sum up all the values, we look at the numbers and say, we only get back 948,000 ringgits. Where are my 52,000 ringgits? Where did it go? By looking at a project from this perspective, I definitely would say I can't go for the project, because 5 years is too long. We never know what is going to happen in 5 years. And secondly, where do I get back my 52,000 ringgits? Let us now go back to the next slide and look which particular way we should go. What is our guideline to decide? Return on investment calculations, the basic calculations, are very helpful for you, as long as you do the calculations yourself and you exactly know what you assume. I would be definitely cautious if external parties are presenting you a very favorable return on investment. That said, for external calculations, I recommend that our years until break even should be below 3 years. And we can use our cost of capital, we can just estimate as 10%. That is the financial side of our presentation. We already covered the technical aspect, and now we already covered the financial aspect. Let us now look into whether we should go for staffing up our plant, whether we should rely on internal resources or we should hire external solution providers. The next slide reveals an answer. For each and every option, I present to you here 4 distinct advantages. Let us now look in scaling up our internal resources and rely on internal resources to start and endure Industry 4.0 projects. Firstly, internal resources always have a deep knowledge of your internal processes, so they exactly know what you have to do. Secondly, if internal resources perform the implementation of Industry 4.0 projects, they definitely can do the maintenance and enhancements for your projects and thus save you significant costs in long run. Thirdly, all your critical process information are kept in your organization and no external party gets it to know. Lastly, your internal staff will definitely gain knowledge and will understand it and can apply it for the next project. You don't have to train them again and again. That was the internal side. Let us now look whether we should better rely on external Industry 4.0 solution providers. If you hire external, you definitely hire a specialist. They know what they have to do. And secondly, they usually implement best practices. Thirdly, you definitely got a lot on your plate. Once you outsource Industry 4.0 project implementation, you get to look on your operations and on other critical aspects. Fourthly, according to the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, there are 200 Industry 4.0 solution providers available in Malaysia. So you definitely find the right one for your organization. Which way should we go? Should we rely on our internal staff, or should we go for external solution providers? Let us merge it together. The project initiating and planning phase should be done with our internal key personnel. The execution, meaning the implementation, is recommended to be done by external solution providers. But they shall be augmented with internal staff. Thus, the maintenance of the projects and the enhancement can be done in-house and saves you a lot of cost and time in future. We looked at all the three parts. Now, let us wrap it up together and come away with three key takeaways. If you forget everything what I said so far, I'm totally fine with that. There's no issue. Just let us keep in mind three key takeaways from today's presentation. Firstly, let us make the documentation clear. Before we even start to think about implementation, we should do a thorough planning and project initialization. We should see what we want to achieve. How can we do that? By following a simple three-step formula. Firstly, we rank our projects according to the ROI and discounted payback period. The shortest payback period, the best. Secondly, we look at our capital expenditure and rank all our projects according to the capital expenditure. And then only we start to implement the projects with the most promising discounted payback period and the lowest capital expenditure. We only can successfully implement Industry 4.0 projects in your organization if we make sure that we cooperate together with our external solution providers. By working together, you definitely gain knowledge and gain insights, and thus you can apply it for your next project. The technical side is one problem. The financial side is even more important. We have to do a thorough study and calculate our return on investment and our discounted payback period before even we start to implement the project. Let us revive the growth of the Malaysian manufacturing sector. Industry 4.0 is our rocket. Let us make sure that it's flying into the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.
So, as we all know, so Simon had a very fantastic sharing session in his keynote address, and somewhere in cyberspace, we have two friends, two BFFs. So one of them is actually Simon, and the other one is Dr. Chua. So they somehow met somewhere in the cyberspace, and they had a discussion over at a virtual mamak shop to discuss what has happened so far. So far, we all know that, and we understand that there's so many challenges that everybody faces, for a lot of manufacturers. But we always hear about the benefits about going for Industry 4.0, and how do we make it interesting, and how do we actually benefit from the successful implementation of 4.0. But as you heard earlier, right, from Simon's sharing earlier, so we all know that at the end of the day, it sounds easy, but Simon has given you very practical solutions of how he faced his challenges and how he actually solved those challenges as well and moving forward. So like Simon earlier said, right, so if you forget all those, forget all his presentations, so you just to remember 3 points, right? But in short, I think at the end of the day, what we talk about is change management. Definitely, we need to do that, right? And successful implementation of a lighthouse project, which means what quick ROIs, right? Quicker ROIs. Let's put it this way, and then eventually, there's a genuine interconnection between all the departments that he has, both internally and externally, right? So now in this initial setting, so Dr. Chua, he will ask questions. We have a quick Teh Tarik session. So during this quick Teh Tarik session, please ask your questions away if you have any. All right. But please put in a chat group, and after that, we'll take up your questions. Yeah. Thank you very much. So the screen is now both of belongs to both of you now, Dr. Chua and Simon.
Okay, thank you very much, Kenneth, and thank you, Simon, for the great presentation just now. I think it's really interesting to see how you have progressed through your Industry 4.0 journey, right? And I think it's also very nice to hear that the challenges on the ground that you have faced while you implement the projects. And although a lot of us don't like to hear that we make mistakes along the journey, but you were all right with sharing some of the mistakes that you have made with regards to your transformation, which is, I think, it's a very interesting thing to know, because it's only natural for us to make mistakes along the way, right? But most important is we learn from them. And I think one of the key takeaway that I got from your sharing just now is that we don't give up along the way, right? We still continue on. But I want to know a bit more on, Simon, like how you started your journey, with regards to Industry 4.0, as you talk about, having external and internal, support, how do you progress along the way towards emphasizing more on internal support, for example, right? And was it difficult for you to get there? And when it comes to talent management and sourcing for the right equipment, for the right sensors, right actuators, was it very challenging, or how was your journey towards that direction? Yeah, maybe you can share more, Simon.
Oh, which question shall I start?
You can start first by sharing with us how do you start your journey as a step-by-step approach. Yeah.
Okay, so what we did in our organization, in our headquarters in Germany and our subsidiary in Malaysia, we actually make sure that you don't have power supply interruptions. So in case you are facing a power supply interruption, that might be our fault, you can give me a call. That was the background where we said we really have to be 100% reliable over the next 30 years. Our products really have to make sure that they can withstand the stresses in their application. My personal journey regarding Industry 4.0 started back in 2013 in our headquarters, whereby in Germany, we definitely face a very high pressure. We face the pressure of costs. We have to compete with other countries with definitely lower production costs. And thus, we really have to go for Industry 4.0 to make sure that we are competitive. At the beginning, we mainly relied on external service providers, external solution providers. They come in, teach us what we shall do. And at the end, we definitely got a result, but it took us too much time. And secondly, it became at the beginning more expensive than we expected. And thus, we studied our results and said, there must be a better way. There must be definitely a cheaper way. Which way shall we go? And thus we came out to say, all right, we train our internal staff. We make sure we understand what we are going to ask the external solution provider to do. By doing so, we gain the following advantages. Firstly, we understand the cost structure. Once we know which equipment our external solution providers are going to use, we know their costs. Once we know their costs, we can evaluate whether it is more feasible to do in-house or we really get a good offer from the external solution provider, so we go for their offer. By gaining the knowledge and by gaining the understanding of implementation of Industry 4.0 projects, we definitely had a long way to learn, a long way to go. But I would say now we learned how to implement it successfully in a method of cooperation the hard way. Back to you, Dr. Chua. Thank you very much for the question.
Thanks, Simon. I mean that's very interesting, especially when you are originally, as you started off your journey in Germany, and then slowly now you're in Malaysia supporting the Industry 4.0 implementation in Malaysia. So from your experience, when you were in Germany and now you're in Malaysia, what are the core differences in terms of the implementation strategies? Do you see a very vast difference, or do you see that you being here in Malaysia?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely, there are key differences compared to Germany. What we did in Germany, usually after we started to implement it successfully, we just say, all right, we have our requirements, we pass the requirements to our external solution providers, they will do the job and they perform the job. In Malaysia, definitely there is more explanation required. We definitely have to walk the external solution provider through our process and explain one by one to make sure we are all on the same page. We definitely have to do it in detail in Malaysia because the costs of changing anything are very high. Let's say something is not clearly mentioned in our requirements list, the costs of the project are really exploding. If we don't mention what exactly we want in Malaysia, it is already all fixed and thus the cost really can double. And that is the key difference between the German approach and the Malaysian approach, that in Germany, it is fine, we just give them the requirements. In Malaysia, definitely we have to explain. The second point I would like to talk about is talent. Over the years, we are very glad that we found our right solution providers, that we got our talent in Malaysia. But to get the talent is really not easy. And then to train the talent up to the task, up to the level we want them to behave is even more difficult. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Simon. That's very interesting to know. So in other words, I think what we could say is that, understanding the key requirements that you need in your factory and having the right people to outline in detail what you really require in terms of the technology, what you want to monitor, what you want to control. I think that's something that we all need to know first as factory owners or business owners before we start engaging on our project and build a successful roadmap, right? Am I right to say that, Simon?
Yeah, perfectly right.
All right, great. Another quick question is that usually I hear from many of the industries that I speak to, what they are most concerned of is that, is there really a real value in implementing, Industry 4.0 for those companies with high mix and low volume production? Right, nowadays we talk about mass customization, right? And in your opinion, is there a big challenge to move towards that direction of Industry 4.0 for those companies that really look into high mix and low volume production?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Dr. Chua. Both in our headquarters and in our subsidiary in Malaysia, we are producing a huge number of products, meaning high variety, but low volume. And still, we were able to successfully implement Industry 4.0 in our organizations. It is definitely crucial to look into where Industry 4.0 can help in a low volume, high mix production. Otherwise, it will defeat its purpose. Thank you. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Simon. Very, very interesting. So that means in your company, you are already implementing it in which it is already high variety and low volume, and hence you see great benefit in terms of implementing that technology in your factory, right? So I think the next question would from me would be, how did you grow your talent team along the way, right? Do you see that from Industry 4.0 implementation, you start to see the growth in the talents of engineering team in your company as you slowly scale up your production, your project implementation of Industry 4.0?
Thank you. What we did at the beginning, we already identified our team and we identified who we can grow internally. And thus we put the effort and we guided them in terms of providing them the training, in terms of providing them the equipment to practically learn, to practically experience what they can do in terms of Industry 4.0. That is more critical for us for the maintenance of the projects than for new projects. Why do I say so? Industry 4.0 has a high capital expenditure, but the maintenance costs are also high if the internal staff does not know how to solve the errors on the way. Thus, we focused on training, training, and training. It takes years to get somebody really capable and knowledgeable about Industry 4.0, but it is definitely worth the effort.
All right. Thank you very much, Simon. Very, very, very good. And, I'm really impressed to hear that, your company is really emphasizing on, human development, right? Or people development, which like you emphasize the 3 key points, which is training, training, and training your team to be able to support you more effectively, in the long run. I also noticed in your sharing that, your ovens that you have shared are it doesn't look like a very new oven, with a 5-star rating, of energy savings. And, you also have, weighing scales that are looking, a bit more, legacy machines. So, in your experience of converting these, systems to Industry 4.0, how do you go about that? Yeah, because there's a lot of questions around, I have a very, very old machine, how do I make it Industry 4.0 ready? And, what is the cost applicable for that? So what is your journey towards that direction?
Thank you. The beauty of Industry 4.0 is that we are mainly adding software and hardware. Thus, the machine or the equipment or the oven remains as it is. Industry 4.0 adds capabilities to your existing equipment. Thus, you don't have to replace your existing equipment. You just have to enhance it. Machines are never too old. We are using equipment which is already my age and above. And by just adding our Industry 4.0 software and components, we definitely enhance the machine and make it ready for the next 10 to 15 years to be used. Thank you.
All right, very interesting, Simon. Given that you are saying that it's more of an enhancement of your machine, and you don't really need to change it, and that's where you save a lot of costs for that, right? So I mean, another question that I usually get from the industry people that I speak to, when they start to look at possible solutions of integration for Industry 4.0. And some of them usually get the impression that, oh, okay, this solution is a one-size-fits-all, right? For any of the industry that's out there. Want to hear your thoughts on, is there a lot of customization required as you move along your integration of Industry 4.0? And is it really a one-size-fits-all, or do you need a lot more customization to fit your requirements in your company, for example?
Great question. Definitely the same question we asked ourselves, whether there's a one-size-fits-all approach. Unfortunately, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Every company is unique. Every process somehow is unique. And the state of the affairs in your organization is definitely unique. Thus, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. But what you definitely can do, you can use a 3-step model, which makes it very easy for you to implement Industry 4.0 in your specific organization. Firstly, identify your pain points and the pain points you can solve with technology. Secondly, identify your costs and your capital expenditure as well as your return on investment to complete these projects. Thirdly, look at the lowest capital expenditure, fastest return on investment, lowest discounted payback period, and start to implement the small projects first. By doing so, you gain the experience you need, and then you have your personal size and fit for your organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. That's a very, very good sharing. Now, a lot of people also ask, the question on, okay, I have a factory, I want to go into Industry 4.0. And what we notice is that, sometimes a lot of processes can be optimized, right, before they even embark on Industry 4.0. So the concept of lean manufacturing or lean management, right, we see it as an important step for Industry 4.0 before you embark or during your embarkment of Industry 4.0. So I want to hear your thoughts about lean. What do you think about embedding lean management, or should it be a prerequisite of Industry 4.0, or should it be done continuously along that process? Yeah.
Lean manufacturing, lean organization, and Six Sigma are definitely very helpful for most of the manufacturing organizations. In our example, in our headquarters in Germany, as well as in our subsidiary in Malaysia, we did not implement either Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, or a lean organization before going into Industry 4.0. It is definitely not a prerequisite, but sure helpful before implementing Industry 4.0. Because once you are lean, your processes are lean, your rejection rate is low if you implement Six Sigma, and you have an even better impact of Industry 4.0 on your organization.
All right, thank you very much, Simon. I think one last question that I have for you before we pass it back to Kenneth, right, and also to pass the questions to the floor, right, if they have any questions. When you do your payback period calculation, right, and I think a lot of times I think what you have shared, looking at return of investment, the ROI calculation sometimes really look good. But when you look into the payback period, then you start to see, oh, there's something that we may not have accounted for, right? I want to hear from your experience when you, as along through the years, as you progress through the Industry 4.0 implementation, do you see an improvement in the payback period as you start to invest more in the internal developments, right? So when you invest more in your people development, when you have more people supporting you in your factory in terms of implementation, do you see your payback period getting shorter, right, as compared to the initial point when you started to engage with external parties? I mean, this is just a general question, that you probably can share. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. If we compare our journey from 2013 to 2021, we definitely made improvements on our discounted payback period. It became shorter and shorter. One of the key reasons was that we get our internal organization to understand about Industry 4.0. Once they understand and they are integrated in the projects, they also support the project. In case we only rely on external service providers to implement a project, the internal staff will say, that is not my project. If anything goes wrong, that is not my problem. And then it becomes really difficult to maintain and enhance the project. For the calculation, yes, definitely, we have to be careful with the return on investment calculation. If we go into detail, we can get the details by knowing the prices of the parts used in the project. And by doing so, if we further enhance our initial planning and calculation methods, we get also a better return on investment. So there are two parts. First, integrating internal stuff into Industry 4.0 projects. And secondly, doing a detailed calculation of the discounted payback period and thus reducing the discounted payback period for the projects.
All right, thank you, Simon. Very, very good sharing. Very happy to hear about your great journey in terms of Industry 4.0. Now, I believe we can pass back the session back to Kenneth. I hope your Teh Tarik is finished already. So we pass back to Kenneth, and maybe we can have more questions from the floor with regards to Simon's journey in terms of Industry 4.0. And I think this is a good time to engage and share. And I hope to hear more feedback from the floor in terms of the questions that you may have. So Kenneth, on to you. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Dr. Chua, for being a fantastic sport so far, actually. I think so far it's been fantastic, and I totally enjoyed the sharing that at the end of the day, both Simon and Dr. Chua had over their interesting Teh Tarik session. What was interesting is, I think fantastic was Simon being very, being very honest in his opinions as well, and he's also very candid in such a way that he has also shared his mistakes along the way, that he actually, fortunately or unfortunately, so it's hopefully not too expensive, those mistakes, and hopefully at the end of the day, there's a lot of, I assume, very good ROIs, that at the end of the day for George Jordan. And moving forward, I suppose, at the end of the day, you are a big believer of Industry 4.0. So moving forward, would there be any questions from the floor? As usual, we are a bit quiet, so we understand we could be shy, but I think in this day and age, we don't need to be too shy. So let me start the ball rolling then for Simon. Now, so today normally we have Dr. Chua on the spotlight, but now we have Simon only. So Simon, very sorry. So what I want to find out from you is, in your earlier sharing or your earlier keynote, right? You mentioned earlier that if it's possible, then we complete everything within 3 years, for your ROI. Is it very ambitious, or is it conservative? Yeah. What do you think?
Definitely, to say we want to complete, we want to get our return on investment, we want to break even after 3 years, is not easy. In the moment we aim for getting our payback within 3 years, we either come close to it or we achieve it. If we aim for a payback period of 5 years, we also can get it, but we never know what is going to happen in 5 years, and thus we normally aim for 3 years. That is so far the best way we want to go. 2 years or 1 year is quite unrealistic, but 3 years is so far the best we can achieve.
Thank you. So it looks like we need to strive within 3 years then. So at least by the 4th year, we can tell our bosses that we make money as well, no? Fantastic. So Then the as usual, so in SHRTC and personally as well, we believe in a lot of talent development, and it's very nice to hear that also in Jordan as well, there is a big talent pool where you train your talent and you continue to train and train and train, which makes it interesting for all your talent. So how much do you put in training in your organization then?
The exact percentage I can't tell, but
Sure.
in the position as being responsible also for production and product development, we like to put a lot of effort in training because our payback period is much lower than 3 years. In the moment, we train our staff and we make sure that they understand their jobs on hand and they understand where the company can bring them and which way we can go together. They are first of all very helpful and very supportive in implementing Industry 4.0 projects. And secondly, we create a bond between our employees and the ideas the employer has for our employees.
Thank you so much, Simon. Then I think one last question before I open up to the floor, because I think there are one or two who could be very curious about what is happening in your office as well. So for Dr. Chua and for Simon, we always talk about implementing a lighthouse project, Dr. Chua. And if the audience here, if you follow us in some of our series here, we'll talk about lighthouse projects. And Simon mentioned earlier about starting off with a small project first, right? So I would assume that this lighthouse projects or this small projects is ideal in starting off the 4.0. Now, we mentioned that at the end of the day, the cost of implementing it could be low, but so we want to keep costs low, right? And we know that lighthouse projects, typically speaking, should be the capex should be low as well, right? But what my question would be eventually, right? How do we know that it is worth spending money on? Because we assuming we have like I think 10 processes in the office, in the factory, but we only know that one or two really we require them. So in my perspective, that one project is core, and to me, maybe at 30,000 ringgit it could be high, but in terms of other companies could be low as well. Right? So, but how do we go and maybe look for a lighthouse project within our office? So I split this into two. So Dr. Chua, coming from Malaysian Smart Factory, how do we look at it? And then Simon, you can actually share from the practitioner's point of view on how you actually looked at it as well. So,
Yep.
Dr. Chua.
So from our end, whenever companies ask us like, okay, how do we start our first lighthouse project or our first proof of concept project? So usually what we will say is, okay, look at the projects that will give you the highest impact, right? The highest value creation, because at the end of the day, what you want to show is that, by integrating these technologies, it helps you to create more value, right? And when it helps you to create more value, then it's always easier to justify the next step of investment, right? Or a stage-by-stage investment. So, and when you work on projects that are a bit more of a low-hanging fruit, right, to get started off with, you start to gain more confidence. And of course, when with those projects, as what Simon has mentioned as well, sometimes we make mistakes along the way, and that's okay, because when you start with your first project, you did not do it the best way possible. There's always room for improvement, right, as we go along. Most importantly is that you see that there is impact, there is value created from the project, and you understand the technology better, you understand what needs to be implemented, what needs to change, and that's how you can actually make your whole scalability of other projects actually more effective. So this from our perspective, but maybe Simon, you can share your experience as well.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. I really like your approach. What we normally do in our organization, and also what I recommend to other organizations, we usually have to invest between 1% and 3% of our revenues to further enhance our manufacturing processes and to further enhance our organization. 1 to 3% of our revenues. Thus, we already have the baseline how much we can or should invest. From that one going, we should rank the projects. Thus, we really should have one list. We just come together at a 1 hour session and write down what is our pain point, where we are feeling pain, where are our processes lacking of the capability and the productivity we need, where are our bottlenecks. After identifying all these things, we will definitely solve the one which is easy to solve, and secondly, which has low capital expenditure, and also what Dr. Chua mentioned, which has a huge impact on the organization. Once the members of the organization see the huge impact, the positive impact of technology on their employment, on their organization, they will be committed to go for further projects. Summary, 1 to 2% of the revenues is our budget. We identify our pain points, and out of that, we identify the project which is with the lowest capital expenditure and the fastest return on investment, but still having a high impact on the organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you so much, Dr. Chua, for interesting insights. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you all have any questions, please?
I got one question, gentlemen.
Yes, please. Can you please identify yourself? Yeah, thank you.
My name is Yip. I'm coming from Kian, furniture industry. In the furniture industry, there's a lot of labor works. I think machinery is very straightforward, where you can get the output and turns, you can tap on the thickness for all the control needs. What about if, let's say, the works involved with a lot of manual works, very basic, like manual welding and etc. How are we going to, is there any approach that we can do to gather all these things for this Industry 4.0? Over to you.
Thank you. Dr. Chua or Simon?
Maybe I can go first in regards to the question on the manual part, right? So, thank you very much, Mr. Yip, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Is it Mr. Yip? Yeah. Thank you very much for your question. And I think this was actually one of the questions that was raised to me recently by another industry as well. They also do a lot of manual station work, right? Manual station work like welding, assembly, that are all still manually, right? So I think the first key question is, what would you want to collect? What do you want to see, right? What kind of parameter that you want to observe? Do you want to observe like how fast the process takes? Or do you want to observe how much downtime is actually happening at that station? Or maybe there's a raw material issue or quality issues that you want to take note of, right? Manual stations can definitely still collect data. It really depends on what you want to see, right? So for example, for that particular industry, what we recommended was that, okay, you can actually implement some sort of like an end-on switch system, right? So end-on switch system would mean that, you have at that particular station like a switchboard, right? Where, if you start a process, you turn it on. If you stop a process, you turn it off, right? So this will then provide to you some data, right, of how fast your production is at that particular station. And if there's any downtime in terms of like raw material shortage or let's say power shortage, gas shortage, when it comes to welding, right? Then you can create that kind of alarms, right? You can switch on, it will track inside your system, and that will give you some form of monitoring at that particular station as well. So this really depends, right? For a manual process, what do you want to see, right? And if let's say you want to you want to see that data flowing, then these are some of the steps that you can take. Otherwise, it will be more on automating certain steps, but that kind of automation will require some form of different equipments, different machines that come in. But as a first step, if you just want to collect your data, you want to see what is actually happening in that particular production line. Maybe, for example, at that station, it's taking too long as what you expected it to be, right? Or maybe the operator that is doing the welding or doing the assembly is not there all the time. When you're not looking at him or her all the time, then suddenly maybe they go, for their short Teh Tarik break, or maybe they are taking their time to actually assemble something. So, with this kind of tracking, traceability, systems in place, you can actually monitor something, at that particular manual station. So this is just one of the ideas, right? But of course, to understand your process better would then allow me to understand what to advise further. Yeah. So maybe Simon, you want to share a little bit on your end?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Chua. For my point of view, I'm not directly into furniture industry, so I can't give you any industry specific advice. But what I definitely can share with you is that there might be a list, Mr. Jip, there might be a list available for you, or you can create a list. Where are your pain points? What really hurts your organization? Once you identify your problems, you can check which one you really can solve with technology. And by doing so, you can identify which technology you can use. There are definitely some case studies about the furniture industry available online and also in the print press, implementing Industry 4.0 successfully. You might be able to look also there. I'm sorry, I'm not in your industry, so I can't give you the industry specific advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chua and Simon. Do you have experience to implement barcode systems for such manual works?
Yeah, in fact, oh sorry, yeah, you first, Dr. Chua.
No problem, Simon. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, thank you. Barcode system, yes, we have experience. We implemented barcode system in our organization. The most important part for a barcode system is to make sure that the barcode can withstand the industrial environment and is readable in a dusty environment. So we definitely experienced a lot of trouble by having small and unreadable barcodes in our manufacturing processes. Barcode system is definitely a way to go to track the movement and the timings of the product and the unfinished goods.
Thanks, Simon. On our end, we did implement a few systems to track barcode, QR codes, and also RFID that we are actually testing out a few applications and how these are sent to databases and in terms of the software part as well, right? So this is something that we can definitely discuss further if you're keen to explore. Yeah. So like what Simon mentioned as well, different industry will implement different kind of traceability systems, right? And it depends on the environment as well. So, how you put the barcode, whether is it readable at a certain point of stage, or if you're doing a bit of non-metallic surfaces, you can always consider, other form of traceability techniques like RFID. That is also one, right? If you are keen to explore that area, because sometimes when it comes to barcode or QR code, you require line of sight, right? You require a line of sight to scan, right? Barcode or QR code, but for RFID, then you don't require the line of sight. Yeah, you just need to be within that area. So it really depends on the industry, what they really, really require.
Okay, thanks, guys.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would there be any other questions from the floor? Dr. Chua, maybe you can share your RFID story that you shared previously when I met up with you. The one with
okay.
the shoes. Is it the shoe industry or?
It was a shoe distributor industry, I think, if not mistaken. So what they had a challenge with was actually to actually do inventory management, right? And I think most of the industries that we talk to as well talk about how to manage their inventory better, how to build a proper warehouse management system, right? So the shoe distributor company had a chat with us, and they basically had a challenge where they distribute a lot of shoes, right? And one of the key challenges was that every time when it comes to audit, right, of how many shoes you have left in the inventory to make sure that everything is checked and balanced, they take about 3 full days to calculate how many shoes are there. They take a lot of resources to actually do all that calculation. And imagine at the end of the 3 days, so happened they found one shoe missing. Right, so happened they found one shoe missing, right? And the challenge for that in terms of barcode was that, you know, and I think this applies to many industries as well. When I spoke to a few logistic based companies, right? The thing about barcodes is from this particular distributor company is that it's always a fixed SKU number. It's always a fixed SKU number, and it's not a unique identifier, right? So when it's a fixed SKU number and not a unique identifier, what could be a problem is that, you know, when something is missing, you're not able to find it, right? So what RFID technology does is that you can actually, you know, without being in the line of sight, you know, within a, let's say a 10-meter range, you know, you're able to scan all the codes in one space, right? You don't even need to go up to the, you know, climb up the staircase or climb up the ladder to scan, right? You can scan one space and then, you know, you already get all the identifiers of whatever products that you have there. This applies for non-metallic products, right? There are metallic products, RFID as well, but that could be, you know, in a form of a tag and so on. So with RFID technology, they could actually improve their production. But of course, the key question is, you know, how much, right? So then, you know, we are currently working on, you know, how to implement a handheld RFID scanner, send it to the database, and also in the ERP system. That's something that we are working on now, right? So of course, any industries, you know, keen to explore, this is something that we can do as well to see how to support you through. And, you know, RFID is also used for a lot of inventory management systems where, you know, if you go to Uniqlo, I mean, now we can't, but if you have went to Uniqlo before and you bought clothes from them, you will notice that all their tags, you know, their clothing tags have RFID tags in it, right? So this actually enables them to do faster checkout, right? Or do inventory management at the same time. Another industry that have implemented that is like Decathlon. If you shop in Decathlon, right? And, you know, places in Japan are doing it as a self-checkout system where all the tags are within the product. You just have to put it in a bag or in a cart, put it at the counter, everything is scanned, you can go, pay and go, right? Rather than the usual checkout systems that are like based on weights, right? If you go to, I think Tesco or Aeon Big, you will notice that, you know, it's based on weighing system, scan and weigh, scan and weigh. So if there's a deviation in the weight, then they will detect that you didn't pay for that product. So, you know, these are things that you can implement, right? It depends on any of your industry applications. It's very, very wide. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. So it's something similar to what I think I saw in China. I think they call it Shop 4.0 or something along those lines.
Yep.
So I know Amazon did it in the US. Recently, I think when we still could travel, I saw this also in China when I was in the exhibition grounds. So what was interesting is the people are there. So the staffers were there, but the staffers were just to maintain the products in a very nice, beautiful manner and those kind of things. So, but when you check out, you just put everything inside there and just move on, you know, and everything's paid for, and you don't have to worry. Of course, there's a system to it, but yeah, that's one way of moving forward. Yeah. So thank you very much, Dr. Chua. And also Simon as well, taking up a lot of the questions. Would there be any other questions from the floor, ladies and gentlemen? So, I mean myself, Kenneth, all right, I represent Master Worldwide, who's organizing this sharing session today. So what's happening is we are actually sales partners for the SHRDC and their flagship program, the Malaysian Smart Factory. In fact, yesterday, what happened was we had, I think, 2-3 participants as well who went for the Smart Factory technical overview. If you're interested in this what's the word, right, with a training program, please do contact us. All right. We also have a data generation course that they also conduct it remotely. So if you are unsure how, or rather if you're still skeptical about why or how can this be done remotely, and we always talk about working remotely as well, you know, in Industry 4.0 to some extent. This is a very good example of how you can actually access some of the machines to test on how do we actually generate data online. You know? So basically, in short, what's happening is the equipment is based in SHRDC's office in Shah Alam, and you are where you are at home. Right? So it's a fantastic way of how actually you can actually see what's happening online. How do we work remotely? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. So as a summary, we would like to thank everybody who's here today for taking your time off this morning. So what's happening is we normally have a YouTube channel as well. So if you want, you can actually go through the previous topics that we have done before. We have a lot of interesting discussion topics as well that we have with Dr. Chua and some of the industry practitioners. But in particular today, I would like to thank very much Simon and of course Dr. Chua for their time, for being very candid as well and very honest as well with us. Thank you very much, Simon. It seems that moving forward, all right, we all understand at the end of the day that there's so many advantages of the Industry 4.0 and how we can move forward. But we also know that at the end of the day, there are a lot of challenges that we need to seek. And I think just to highlight some of the, we all know about what the advantages are. And I just want to highlight some of the challenges I think that I saw and noticed from Simon. So please don't mind me, Simon, if I'm wrong, please do correct me, okay? So what I understood, some of the key challenges I saw earlier was, what was interesting is they actually identified what projects they wanted to do, but communication was a key for them, where at the end of the day, there was not enough data that was transmitted to the external service provider, where if there was enough, what's the right word, communication or enough data that went to the service provider, and he or she can actually provide Simon a better solution, and in this case you save time and also save money as well at the same time. No? Then of course at the end of the day, since we talk about internal and external service suppliers, right? So there's a genuine need, all right, to interconnect these departments in this case. You know? So in other words, there's a lot of, and it's a very key challenge at the end of the day. I think a lot of organizations or a lot of factories will need to go through. Of course, there are a lot of, there's one more thing I think that is very important, where I think in some terms, we call it change management. In some terms also, they call it company culture as well. So in other words, we really need to look way beyond what we are doing now, right? And actually see those mini lighthouse projects as Dr. Chua and Simon mentioned earlier, about how do we move forward and how do we identify these projects and what do we really want, actually, basically in short. So I would assume that at the end of the day, that so your factory has a lot of processes, right? We have like A to Z, and like what Simon mentioned earlier, is actually very rightly put. So your process is unique to your factory, and your company culture is very unique to you as well, yeah. But in many ways, yeah. So I'm a trained engineer. So what I like to do in my office is I'm doing events now. So I break down a lot of these big project to smaller items, and then from the smaller items, we see, okay, how do we solve this part? How do we solve this portion? How do we solve that portion as well? So like what Mr. Yip shared earlier about the manual part of his factory processes. So that's one way of maybe from that small portion, how do we solve that small portion first, and then how do we move forward? Yeah. So as what we normally do, I would like to first invite Dr. Chua first to actually say a quick shout out. Then eventually, then Simon, you can do the closing. Yeah. So Dr. Chua, your final shout out, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kenneth. So for me, I would say that actually now is a very, very good time, especially for everyone present here today, to actually understand further regarding, you know, the Industry 4.0 environment. What are the key areas that you need to take note of, right? And this is actually covered extensively in our technical overview program, if you're really, really keen to embark on it, right? Where we help you to sort of demystify some of your questions of Industry 4.0, right? And, you know, take that first step, right? Take that first step and, you know, look at what are the you know, the impactful projects that you can do as a first start, like what Simon mentioned, those with a lower capex, right? We can always start with that, and, you know, start to see that improvement and how it works for you. Yeah. So, you know, it's a good time to get started, and if you need any help, we are always there to support you. Yeah. So back to you, Kenneth.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. And Simon, I would like to invite you to say a quick shout out and just close off the whole thing.
I'm really glad that everybody joined today. So you definitely will build up your technical expertise to implement Industry 4.0 in your organization. Let's say you got any question further, what I did not explain properly, no issues. You also can contact me. I really want to thank you to be here today. Let us all take the first small steps together to implement Industry 4.0 successfully. We start small, but at the end, after a number of years, we have the huge impact. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Kenneth.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much. Indeed, this is one, so we take baby steps, as we mentioned, then we can run. Yeah. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And this ends the whole session today.